Broadcasting from an undisclosed location under a farm pond somewhere in the Midwest. Your host is Jim Crowley. This is Slickfish Radio.
And there we are. We are back. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Slickfish Radio. I am your host, Jim Crowley. So glad you all are joining us tonight. We had a great show with Jeff Gustafson, who was on last time, and appreciate all y'all coming on and checking that out. And we're going to have a fun time tonight. We are going to be talking about making your own plastics with Jerry Skates from Skater Baits. And he also helps us with a lot of design ideas and things like that over at Lure Parts Online. So we're going to be talking about some new plastics tonight. We might even be giving away some. So we got a lot to talk about tonight, because one of the coolest, or one of the growing parts of the industry in the last year is more people making their own stuff. And that could be cost of living. Things are a lot more expensive, but people are just starting to figure out ways to make their own plastics. And it's fun. I mean, I love, anybody who watches this show and watches my other one on Wired to Fish TV knows that I love making my own rods. I love making my own baits. And making your own plastics is just another extension of that DIY stuff, about just learning how to do things your own way. And there's no doubt right now that there's more intelligent fishing pressure on the water now than ever before. And being able to make your own baits and put a twist on it and do things like that, well, obviously it's going to lead to probably some more fish catches. And I feel the same way about when you make your own rods. I've said for a long time that you will never, there's a lot of great rod companies out there. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of great ones out there, but you will never fish a rod better than one that you built yourself. It adds a completely different thing to it. It's, you've got more stake in the game right now, and you just fish them differently. I took up rod building later in life, and I noticed that right away. Is just that you just seem to be more in tune with rods that you build yourself, and I love doing it. So, but we're going to bring on Jerry in just a little bit. And we'll talk to him about making plastics. And thanks to everybody who's joining us, not only on Wired to Fish TV, Facebook Live tonight, but also Wired to Fish TV, Roku, Fire TV, Amazon Music, iTunes, and Spotify. So glad that you all took your time to watch the show tonight. I want to thank our friends over at Scheels. Hey, it is summer, and everything, any sport out there, Scheels is your outfitter, man. I mean, they have everything. Doesn't matter if it's a ball sport, to fishing, to kayaking, to you name it, riding a bicycle like I love to do, playing darts, whatever it is. Scheels has got, just seeing who else is chiming in tonight. Thank you all for coming in tonight. Scheels has got everything. And so they are just your one-stop shop for everything that you want in the outdoors. Also got to thank our friends from Lure Parts Online. A lot of great things as you're going to be hearing about tonight. A lot of great new baits that are coming out from Lure Parts. So really excited about all that. Got to work with some of the design and some of the ideas, and that's always a lot of fun, especially when we've been catching fish on them. And I know y'all are going to be really happy to see a lot of that stuff too. Our friends over at KastKing, iCast is coming up, and rumor has it at KastKing that for iCast, they're going to have at least 30 new products they're going to be bringing out at iCast. So I always love going to iCast. It's always fun, and that's going to be fun to see a lot of the new products. Now, our friends over at Mudhole, my Signature Series rod kits are now available, and I thank you all. They're doing quite well, actually. Just got a text today, and so thank you very much. You'll see a little ad for them later. There's 3 different kits that you can choose from over at Mudhole, and we'll show you about some of those. But yeah, I just love the folks over at Mudhole. They've been great working with this, and we're having a really good time with it. And of course, our friends over at Dakota Lithium with their 11-year warranty. I'm actually running 4 Dakota Lithium batteries in my boat this year, so it's awesome. I've got more power and could probably light up a small city. I don't really even need to charge my boat every day anymore. It's incredible how much power there, and with an 11-year warranty, and they back it up with great customer service. We are so grateful to our friends over at Dakota Lithium. So we're going to start talking making baits and doing your own plastic baits. So we're going to bring in Jerry Skates. Hi, Jerry. How are you, buddy?
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Good, 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 good. And I know you've been busy lately, pouring this, that, and the other thing, and a bunch of different stuff. But let's just start. How did you get into, and when did you get into building your own plastics?
Well, I have been building tackles since I was 9 years old. I'm
Jeez.
55. I have built just about like you about everything on you can do anything from lead cast jigs to sinkers to handmade crankbaits to rods, top fly tying. Got into the soft plastics probably 8 or 9 years ago. Got into it really seriously about 5 years ago, and it's just like you said, it's an extension of your fishing, and I don't use anything that I buy straight out of the store. I am a notorious tinkerer for changing, modifying, altering, making it better. I just love a tackle junkie. I'm just a tackle junkie at heart. That's exactly how I felt. When you have that extra confidence in something because you built it yourself or you've modified it, it's amazing what it does for your fishing. Even if it's just in your head, it makes you fish more effectively. It makes you fish better, and the result obviously is going to be more fish in the boat or more fish in the live well. And I've done that for years and years, and like you said, probably 90% of the tackle that's in my boat I've built. I mean,
Now, do you remember like when you started, like when you went, I think I can do that a little bit better, or do you remember when that actually happened? Even though you said you started when you were really early, you're really really young, but do you remember at a tournament one time or something where you go, I can do that better than that?
um, I would say probably I started tournament fishing when I was 15 on the old Red Man tournament trail. It started right about that time. One of the very first tournaments of the year was on Grand Lake St. Mary's in Ohio. That's a big flipping lake,
Hmm.
and you just back then I just didn't feel I could buy a decent flipping jig with a good hook in it. And I'm like, I can buy a do it mold, buy a box of hooks, and make my own. And next thing you know, you're making colors that nobody has, and that boosts your confidence. You're making lighter baits, heavier baits, things like that maybe you can't buy. And that's really where I got started. It really was kicked off by my tournament fishing clear back then.
Yeah, I remember just taking, I think it was back in the day. This is going to be my goodness, back in the '90s, and taking a Bulldog spinnerbait, who I used to work with, used to do promotion work for Bulldog, and just bending the wire a different way, bending the hook up a little bit, changing the skirt a little bit, taking a double bladed and going down to a single blade. I'm like, man, this is a lot of work after I buy the bait and everything like that. And then I would tear them down and redo stuff with them. But you started noticing, just like you said, all of a sudden you started catching fish. And I would do the same thing with jigs. I would modify my jigs right out of the package and change them, and they caught fish better for me. And I remember back in the day going, I don't know if I'm catching more fish than everybody else, but when I do well, I seem to be landing more than everybody else. And it had to be it had to be just with those things that you were tweaking, that you were doing, whether it be bending a hook up a little bit, bending a wire a certain bit, maybe changing hooks on something, maybe changing skirt colors. And I think when you start doing that, it's almost like you're opening a Pandora's box. You start on one, and then all of a sudden you're going, well, maybe I can do it on this, or I can do it on that. Now you started with jigs. Do you remember what like the next thing was? Where you're like, well, now I can do it on this too.
You know, I probably have 300 do it molds, lead molds, and there is probably not one of them that ain't been tinkered with. And it started out on jigs. I immediately went to spinnerbaits because I'm a power fishing kind of guy, so I
Mhm.
like to I like to move. And I remember forever ago I bought some little tiny spinnerbaits down in a bait shop in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was a handmade bait by an old gentleman down there for the Ohio River. and it was I think they called them Timmy Poe's spinner
I
baits, if I
remember
remember
those.
right. Yeah.
And
So
they
they
were
had
a
a
single
twisted eye.
spin.
Yeah, exactly. Little twisted eye, some plastic beads, you know, a really inexpensive paint job, and they had the old flat rubber skirts.
Yep.
And I bought some of those. I brought them back up here. And of course, I'm fishing a lot of smaller inland lakes and
Hmm.
backwater type stuff on the Maumee River and Lake Erie and that kind of thing. And it was a killer. So then I started looking at that little bait. I'm like, how can I make it better? First of all, I hate the twisted eye. It's
Hmm.
nothing but a pain. So I made an R bend. I changed the wire diameter so that every fish didn't just straighten the thing out because I boat flip about everything.
Yeah.
So a little bit bigger hook, and the next thing you know, I had kind of developed this little river spinnerbait that is just an absolute killer all along Lake Erie, and we I kind of worked with that, and then you know, of course, the smallmouth thing started catching on in Erie, and
Hmm.
I literally done the very first rattling tube head that was ever thrown in Lake Erie.
Wow.
I probably made that head, well, now probably close to 40 years ago. And when I first did it, I used to take a bread twist tie, strip the paper off, and wrap that around the eye of of a tube jig head, wrap it around the plastic rattle, and insert it inside the head. Well, that didn't take me long to go, well, that's just takes way too much time. So I took a do it mold, got my Dremel out and the drill press, and I ruined about 3 molds before I finally got one straight, and I started molding the rattle right in the lead, right on the hook. And I probably fished that with about a dozen other guys that I sold them to and gave them to for probably 10 years before that ever hit the market.
Wow.
I have fished that rattling head ever since, and of course, now there's, dozens of companies that have
Sure.
copied that idea and made it since then. But yeah, we were there was a small group of us on Erie that were fishing that way before anybody else. And and you do that.
When did you start making plastics or getting into plastics more? You started with the hard baits and then you shifted into getting these molds and doing all this stuff. Was that the same process? Like, hey, I think I can do this better, and then I'm going to start making my own plastics as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I poured plastics all along, clear back when I worked at Jan's Netcraft many years ago as the showroom manager. We had these old small plastic injector that made soft plastic. Literally, you put the plastic in, it has its own injector built right in it, and you could shoot one bait at a time.
Hmm.
And we played around with that back then. We made some baits. Never really got super serious, but I was more to just kind of know how to sell the product at the time. And then started getting into the aluminum injection type molds, hand poured silicone molds, and then like 5 years ago, I really got to where I started deciding, you know what, I can make a better plastic bait than I can buy. I want designs that are my own. So I started sketching and drawing and coming up with designs and baits, and then getting, mold manufacturers like Lurecraft and Lure Parts online to do the artwork and actually produce a custom mold that makes the bait exactly the way I wanted it to be. And that has really, really, really been a good thing.
And so kind of just explain to people what would be, if you're going through this process, and there's going to be people out there to go, I've been thinking about making my own plastics. So if somebody is asking you that, if I want to make my own plastics, what would you tell them? What is the startup? How do they go about starting to do that?
So there's three basic mold options. So if we start with what they call hand pour. So basically, you're gonna heat your plastic up in a Pyrex cup in a microwave, and you're gonna physically hand pour this plastic into a silicone mold. So a silicone mold will be a mold that is uh, open on the top, and it will always have a flat side. So you can Lure Parts has hundreds of different ones, and you can literally buy one of those molds for 10, 11, 12 bucks, and some of them are two, three, four, five cavities a piece, and you can buy some plastic and color it and glitter and a Pyrex mixing cup, and you can be making baits. And it's really that simple to do the hand pours, and then you kind of learn about the different types of plastic and the different colorants and glitter sizes. But then once you decide, okay, I'm done with the silicone thing, and that won't take long, and you'll be done with the silicone thing, and then you'll go. Then there's the next step up would be the Do It Essential Series molds, which are a sand cast mold. So most of those I think are running like 35 bucks or so right now
Hmm.
for a multi-cavity one. And those are an injection mold. So you're going to need a few other tools to be able to do that. You're going to have to buy an injector, and then still the Pyrex cup and the same glitter and plastics and things. And then you can shoot baits by injecting that plastic into this multi-cavity mold, and it will produce you a really nice little bait. Now, it will be a dull finish.
Hmm.
It will not be shiny. And that dull finish, um, some people don't like. The fish don't care. Actually in Japan right now, that is becoming the big rage.
Sure.
Dull finish plastics in Japan is really taking over the market over there right now because those fish are so spooky. So once you get through those essential series molds, and you decide, okay, now I want to step up a notch, and I want to get into a nice aluminum CNC mold. And Lure Parts again has hundreds of different options. Those molds, they vary in a lot of price range. I mean, you can maybe get into $75 range all the way up to multiple hundreds
Yeah.
of dollars, depending on numbers of cavities, depending on the and the intricacies of the mold, how much detail there is in the mold. But those will shoot baits that are going to be very shiny, like you
Hmm.
would buy normally in the store, like most people are used to. And you can add salt and scent and all these different things. But once you go to that CNC type injection mold, you are going to be hooked. It is going to be a disease you can't get away from, and you will buy multiples, and if you don't like them, you can sell them. There's all kinds of Facebook sites everywhere to
Sure.
peddle
Yep.
them and buy different ones and try what you're doing. And there's so many variations out there, sizes and everything. It's a disease.
It is, and I'll tell you what. The more I've got involved with it in the last couple years, of just like you said, we do the drawings, we come up with an idea, and now one of the hottest selling items at Lure Parts is molds, because there are so many people starting to make their stuff. Because I think what's happening is exactly what you said. Once they start on one, then they move up, and then once they get to the top, then it becomes addicting. And one of the baits that you've been helping us out with, which I want to show people tonight, this is a new wiggle stick that Jerry's working on for us. We're going to come out with this, I think, another week or two, something like that. It's pretty close anyway. But we wanted a wacky worm that was going to be ours. And I love throwing, I've been throwing a wacky worm since the mid 90s, probably. And it's always been a consistent fish producer for me, largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, whatever, when water clarity dictates to where I feel I can get those fish to bite it.
So in the plastic formulas, there's a lot of different what they call durometers. And durometer, basically, to boil it down, is the density of the plastic. So
Okay.
there are really soft, ultra finesse type durometers that would be um, way even softer than that. So I would compare that to like maybe a robo worm.
Mm-hmm.
super, super soft. And then you can get into what they call more of like a medium durometer that would be a traditional rubber worm that everybody's used to. And then you can go up into a tube type plastic where it's much more durable.
Mm-hmm.
That particular one there is a sinking plastic. Most all plastics float. So for them
Mm-hmm.
to sink, you have to add something to it, whether that's salt, which is most common, or a glass media like a real fine glass or sand.
Mm-hmm.
And that just it 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 does multiple things. One, it makes the bait sink, but it also will degrade the plastic.
Right.
So your baits will not last as long. Um, the salt, people think, for years that's been all the fish will hold on to it longer. I don't know about that. I think that's a selling pack point that's we've all been hooked on for years. But the different durometers will put different actions in the baits. So when you look
Mm-hmm.
at lure parts online and you look at their different durometers, their different plastics that they have, you can blend those. So you can
Ah,
do 50
okay.
50, 25 75, whatever you want to do to get your own personal liking to that plastic. Now, that particular wiggle stick is made out of a sinking blend.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very dense plastic. It does not float, obviously, it sinks,
Yep.
but it has no salt. So that bait has a lot of action and
Yep.
has really good durability because the salt is not degrading the plastic. The other thing that salt does in plastic is it changes the colors. It alters
Yeah.
the colors. So a lot of your ultra clear colors, they become cloudy. Your color shift colors, they won't change colors because the salt throws that off.
I think before the bait, they crushed it. But I think I had 19 fish on my first one
Yeah,
before, and
that's
that's a
insane.
lot. That's a lot of fish. Now I guarantee you, if there would have been salt in that bait, it would have tore apart. There's no doubt in my mind. Salt or sand, it would have tore apart because once those fish start thrashing around and thrashing that bait back and forth, that salt also is going to create those gaps in there, and that's going to help that plastic tear.
Yep.
And I noticed that I'm like, huh, my first one I tried on this, and it was 19 fish. That's pretty cool. And the worst fish on these are not always the big ones. The worst fish on these are like those little 12 to 13 inchers that just come and just shake everything like crazy, and they will tear a bait up. And I noticed how long that stayed. The other cool thing about it is, since it with it sinking on its own, just the type of plastic that's in here, it shook really well weighting it. Now I can weight it if I want to fish it in windier conditions. I'll usually use like some kind of weighted wacky worm hook, and I can do that. Or if I want to fish it deeper, but it was pretty cool that this thing sank slow enough, but it still got through the water column enough to where when I twitched the rod tip, it wasn't popping to the surface right away. To me, it's weighted really, really perfectly. The other thing this thing does that I don't know, a lot of people they're going to have to try it to see it. I can this thing a country mile, and I mean on a spinning rod, that thing hits the water surface, there's more of that worm to grab the surface, and it flies back under a dock. This will probably be, when I've got water clarity and really clear docks, probably one of my number one baits because I can get it so far back. And I mean, I've skipped it literally, whether people believe me or not, 25 or 30 feet back underneath the long standing dock. We did it on Mille Lacs just to see where those docks were extending out over into deeper water. It is amazing how far the density, yet how soft this plastic is, how far back that it can skip. And I think people are really going to appreciate that once they start fishing it. And I fished a lot of wacky worms and a lot of brands, and I've never had one skip that far or last that long. And I agree with you. I think a lot of it has to do with no salt in it, just using a sinking plastic. Have you started to use that sinking plastic on other baits too instead of salt, or been doing that for a while?
That's a fairly new the sinking plastic's fairly new to what I do. Most everything that I've been using for numbers of years is a blend of my own. I blend the lure parts plastics to what I want them to be. and I'm not a salt guy, so I salt the daylights out of the tubes that I make, but other than that, everything is no salt. Um, the sinking plastic, I'm not a Senko stick bait kind of guy. What that's not my type of fishing, so I'm not one to use that a whole lot. But it's fairly new to me. This sinking blend. It's really in the industry. It's not been out there that long. It's maybe only a few years old that the sinking formula has existed.
Yeah, and I love it. We were actually talking about the other day putting that in some more of the baits because there are certain baits where it's going to be a benefit. One, you can get away with really still making it really soft, limp plastic that gives it a lot of action, but there's a lot more durability to it. And
Yep.
I just really like that. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to come back and talk about another bait that we're coming out with soon. There's a whole bunch of baits we're coming out, but I figured I'd show you guys a couple tonight. But we're going to take a little break. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes, and we'll continue this conversation with Jerry Skates about making plastics and making your own plastics. Be back in 2 and 2.
Located in Springfield, Illinois' largest selection of sports and sportswear, hunting, fishing, specialty shops and services, a 65-foot Ferris wheel, 16,000-gallon saltwater aquarium, and industry-leading knowledgeable employees. You don't take chances at Shields, ever.
At Lure Parts Online, we have everything you need to make your own lures, tie your own flies, pour soft plastics, and more. Easy ordering ensures you get your products quickly. You can build all you need to create your own angling success at Lure Parts Online. Cast King, fueled by innovation through novel concepts and ingenious designs, markets directly to consumers with unprecedented cost-effective e-commerce practices, cutting costs by 30% more on average. Cast King empowers anglers of all skill levels to achieve things never thought possible. Find out more at castking.com. Mudhole is your number one source for custom fishing rods. Mudhole is the world's largest supplier of rod building supplies, information, education, and instruction. The best components and brands you trust, including MHX, CRB, American Tackle, Pro Products, Fuji, AFCO, and more. It's easy to build your own fishing rods at mudhole.com. Believing quality is measured by lifespan, harnessing their unique chemistry, engineering, and know-how. Dakota Lithium lasts 4 times longer, powering your passions and backing it up with an 11-year warranty. Find out more at dakotalithium.com. There we go. Come here. Get in here. Yeah, nice fish right there. Hi, I'm Jim Crowley. Make sure you catch my show, Jim Crowley Outdoors, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time and 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, exclusively on Wired to Fish TV. Look for Jim Crowley Outdoors on Wired to Fish TV on free, ad-supported streaming TV, including Plex, that can be downloaded in the App Store at Apple TV, Roku, Samsung, and others.
And we are back with Jerry Skates talking about making your own plastics. And Jerry's been doing it for quite a while now. He actually helps us out quite a bit at Lure Parts Online with design ideas as well as plastic formulas. And there's just a whole. Are you always looking or thinking about new ideas, or are this things that you're getting from people, or this is just stuff that you come up with on your own? How does that process work?
So it never ends. I am always one or two ideas ahead of the one I'm working on currently.
Well, one of the ones that I really like, and Andrew Taylor from Lure Parts and I were working on this. And you said you fished a little bit too. And this is our brand new little bait here. If you guys can see this is called a hitchhiker. And it was first and foremost developed to fish on the back of a bladed jig. Now you can fish it vertical. Get this over here. Here you go. Vertical or horizontal. And that little tail we have back here made with that plastic that Jerry's using. If you notice this on here, there we go. It's a really limp plastic. And the way that little spade tail on the back, I love it because it mimics the blade. No matter how slow you're reeling that bladed jig, that little hitchhiker is on the back there still doing stuff. And fishing it vertical is what most people do on a bladed jig. But you and I were talking about a week or so ago, and you were fishing it horizontal, still got great action. But explain to people why. When you said that, I go, well, yeah, because most of the time, just tell them why you're fishing it both ways now as well, or as well.
So most all chatterbait trailers are a bluegill design. Some profile is designed to give a bluegill or a shad tape design, and they're fished vertical,
Hmm.
which is a great thing, except if you're going to throw that thing around a chatterbait around any kind of wood.
Hmm.
If you get a chatterbait in the wood, it is going to come up against the log. It's going to lay over on its side and hang every
Yep.
single time.
Yep.
If you take that chatterbait trailer and you rig it flat on that hook, you've just created a flat surface that when that chatterbait comes up and hits that
Yep.
log, instead of rolling over, it's going to come straight up and over. And
Yep.
you do that one time, you will be amazed at how much more weedless that takes a typical jackhammer or Evo or any kind of chatterbait that's out there in the market will make that thing come through wood so much better. That's a great trailer for that. And the tail action is just as good whether it's vertical or horizontal.
Yeah.
Doesn't make a bit of difference to that.
Yeah, and the cool thing about that is just because one thing I liked about it too is you can notice how limp that plastic is. And with that, whether people realize that or not, when you rig that on there, the limper that plastic is, the better action it's going to have even at slower speeds. Because when you have a really stiff plastic, it takes a lot to get that going. Well, that's I don't it's because I when I first started and I've thrown a bladed jig for a long, long time, and it's one of my absolute favorite baits. Actually, it's caught some smallmouth on it today. Uh, but I would throw swim bait a lot, and you get to know, and after you throw a bladed jig for so long, that the length of the trailer makes a difference. If you want the bait to hunt more, you use a shorter trailer. If you want the bait to stay more in line, more, you use a longer trailer. It makes a difference on the bait that you're doing. You also have to concentrate on if you're using a swim bait trailer, because if you use one that's too big of a tail on it, it can actually override the action of the blade and just get things all wonky. And
Kills
you
it. Yeah.
want to do that. So I'm trying, and when I'm fishing really stained water with it, I will use a swim bait as long as it's got a small tail on it. But just about every other time, I want one of those long trailers on there because what you want to me is the blade is the biggest part of that skirt. It gives it, or that bait, it gives the action to that. I don't want my trailer taking away from the action that's been so successful because of that blade. And that's why when the chatterbait first came out, it just had a twin tail on the back, and that worked fine. And then everybody wanted to come out. Well, once we started throwing these single tail ones, I thought whatever brand it is, it mimicked it better. But just like you, I'm like, we got to be able to do something better. And now we've made it a little bit longer. And we've made ridges. So you can literally cut it off to the length that you want. And in the spring, if I want a bigger profile, I may leave the whole bait on there. As summer comes and I want that bait hunting more now, I may cut up off to a half or 3/4 of an inch just to get that bait to hunt more. And like you said, now I can do it vertical and I can do it horizontal. I think once people start, we're going to be doing a video on this in a couple weeks. And I think once people see the underwater action of this and realize what this bait can add to whatever bladed jig that you throw, I think we really got a winner on here, because the biggest fault of a bladed jig or a chatterbait is exactly what you said. Unless you're holding your rod tip up to glide that bait over the top, and it's easy to miss a strike when that happens. If you just lay that rod tip at that 45-degree angle when you're fishing it, that thing's going to roll over and hang almost every single time, isn't it?
Exactly, exactly. And something else that we didn't touch on tonight today, but that plastic that's in that particular bait and a lot of the other ones that we're making for lure parts is super soft, just like you said. But what people don't think about is when you put that in cold water. So plastic is affected by the cold or the hot
Mm-hmm.
water. So when you fish that early spring, when you're in that 48, 50, 52-degree water, late fall, that thing is still going to have a ton of action. It's
Yep.
not going to get stiff and become a stick like a lot of other plastics do when that water's cold. And obviously, the warmer it is, just the more action it has to go with. But that's something that a lot of people don't really think about is what my bait's doing when that water's cold.
Right. I've called it, and I know I'm not the first person to call it that, but I call it bait awareness. You have to know what your lure's doing. If you don't know what your lure's doing on every single cast, you're missing bites. Period. End of story.
Yep.
You got to know what those lures are doing. You got to know what you can be able to expect from, because if you know what you expect from those lures, you're going to be able to fish them more effectively. And I think with all of us working on this trailer together, I think people are going to see the benefits of this. One being made out of a soft plastic, one having a tail on here and a soft enough plastic that's going to be able to be effective on the slowest retrieve and also be effective on a little bit quicker retrieve. On top of it, now you can fish it both ways. You can fish it vertical and horizontal. So you literally have a trailer that will help you guide your bladed jig, in my opinion, through cover better than anything else that I've seen right now. Because
Well,
even a
and
swim,
that
yeah,
that bait can be used for a lot of things other than a chatterbait trailer. I mean, you can free rig that bait. You rig that bait
yep,
flat on a free rig, it just has this really nice glide to it. There's a lot of different ways that that bait can be used, not just for a chatterbait trailer.
drop shot. It's going to be
Yep.
with that thick head part right here. This is going to be that's a great hooking surface for a drop shot. And because it's got a little bit longer of a body, you can Texas rig it on a drop shot if you want, or power shot it if you want, because you've got enough plastic to dig in there to throw it in the heavy cover if you want. So there's a lot of really, really cool things that we can do with it. But yeah, it's just I'm excited, man. We got a lot of cool stuff coming out. It's been great working with you so far. I can't wait to see what we can all come up with together. I feel like this has like been like a mad scientist type of crew working together because it's fun, and
It's
then
fun.
coming up with stuff. And I love some of the colors that you've come up with, especially that new what is the color of that perch thing? I know they can't see it on here, but what was the name of that perch color that you told me?
We're going to call it, I call it juvenile perch. And I believe that's the color that Lure Parts is going to continue to call. But that is going to be an absolute killer for me on Erie and St. Clair.
Yeah,
It's
well, I was
fun.
thinking when you sent me that color today, I'm like, that is going to work on Mille Lacs certain types of the year because they're chasing perch. I'm looking at that for a river color as well because it's a good it's great natural water, but it's a good contrasting color as well because of all that stuff. So there's going to be stuff I can get away with a little bit more stained water, that copper colored water when you get up into Ontario on certain parts of Eagle Lake or Lake of the Woods where those smallies are feeding on perch there too. That's going to be a flat out killer. It's just it's going to
Absolutely.
stand out. It's just an awesome color. Now, if people want to find out more about Skater Baits, about your stuff, where can they find you?
Then you can go to skaterbaits.com and that'll transfer you over to my Facebook page and you can message me through that and we can work on anything you want to work on from there.
Yeah, and like I said, Jared's working with us at Lure Parts Online. We've got a lot of great stuff coming out. I think within the next couple of weeks, I think is when some of the stuff launched. So stay tuned here as well as on social media. I'll be showing stuff on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and TikTok as well. We're really going to get you guys an elaborate description of these baits when we come out because I think it's useless to come out with new baits if people don't know exactly what they're for. And I'm sure you're probably going to find some other uses for them, but we're going to give you the basis of what we designed them for, what we wanted to do with them to help you catch more fish. So we got some exciting times ahead. I'm looking forward to it. Jared, thank you for your time, for your expertise and doing all this. And thanks for being on the show tonight. And I'm sure you and I will be talking soon.
I'm sure, definitely.
All right. God bless you, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Same to you.
See ya. Jerry Skates, what a great guy. And I'm glad, hopefully that gave you some more insight tonight on learning more about. It is easy to make your own plastics. I mean, Jerry's been doing it for years. I make a lot of my own lures. I make most of my own lures, and that is Shields in Springfield, Illinois. Just a great store there. Monster Ferris wheel, big saltwater tank. If you're in the Springfield area, make sure you stop by because it's not just a store, it's a destination. It's a really, really cool place. And if you haven't been to the Shields in Springfield and you go down that way, do yourself a favor, stop in there. You, no doubt, you'll be impressed. On top of that, there's a great fudge store there. You'll love it. Our friends over at Lure Parts Online, and since we are talking about lure parts, I'm going to give you this. How about this right here? If you decide to get anything from Lure Parts coming up, your first order, put in this code, JC Outdoors 10. You will get 10% off of your first order. So, hey, check out the new stuff at Lure Parts right now, man. There's just a whole bunch of stuff coming out, and you'll see some of the new stuff we have coming. Get your order in now, man. A lot of great stuff, and it's just a great place if you want to make your own baits. It's Lure Parts Online. It's awesome. Our friends over at KastKing, as I said, a lot of new products coming out, and why pay retail? I'm giving you a 20% off code that you can use at Cast Time as many times as you want, whenever you want. Pass it on to your friends. This is our way of telling you thanks for watching the show. You put in that code JC52AFF. You get 20% off anything and everything over there at KastKing. Now, our friends over at Mudhole, my new Signature Series rod kits are out. I think there's a Father's Day special going on. Go to mudhole.com. No question, the best place for information, education when it comes to rod building is Mudhole. I learned building my rods from videos from Mudhole. I've got some videos on there too about building some of the signature rods along with some other stuff. If you want to get into rod building, literally, it is a one-stop shop for anything and everything when it comes to rod building. You make one call, you got a question, everybody at Mudhole builds rods. You talk to somebody on the phone, that's the person who's going to get you your answer. You're not shuffled around everywhere. You want a one-stop shop, you want to get into rod building, mudhole.com. They are your place. Also want to thank our friends over at Dakota Lithium Batteries. Absolutely thrilled running my Dakota Lithiums. Also, remember something about Dakota Lithium Batteries. A lot of lithium batteries out there. Who puts the most into the sports? But walleye fishing, bass fishing, who gives back the most? Dakota Lithium Batteries. You're interested in a new lithium battery? Go to Dakota Lithium Batteries, put in that code SlickFish10, and you will get 10% off. Hey, 10% is a big deal when you're talking lithium batteries. So there's that code right there, SlickFish10, and you can do that. My wife just chimed in. Hi from upstairs. Hi, sweetie. Glad that you're here. Thanks for chiming in. So, but otherwise than that, I really appreciate all of you being here tonight. We'll have another episode in 2 weeks coming up. Going to be a really, really cool show. I'm not going to tell you everything about it. It's just going to be a really in-depth into behind the scenes of a big, big company in the fishing industry. It's going to be really, really cool talking to this gentleman. So you want to see more of us, just remember my show, Jim Crowley Outdoors, is on Wired to Fish TV Monday through Friday. We also have hour slots, I think, on Saturday and Sunday. So the show is on 7 days a week. You can also see Slick Fish Radio on Wired to Fish TV. You can also find us on Roku, Fire TV, Amazon Music, iTunes, and Spotify. And as far as social media, keep up with us. Keep up with Jim Crowley Outdoors on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube. And as I always tell you, we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for all of you. I'm extremely grateful for all of you, and I hope you have a great rest of the week. Until next time, God bless you. See you soon.